Recap. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Dao, Chapter 1001, Chapter Ra. In the vast and restless lands of the joint peace planet, beauty itself had become a kind of currency, one that flowed as freely as spiritual energy. For any cultivator who had stepped into the mountain river tier, taking a beautiful woman as a companion was no longer a distant dream, but an easily grasped luxury. Yet even among beauties, there were unseen hierarchies. A maiden born into poverty and a princess raised within royal halls, though both possessed delicate features, carried entirely different meanings in the hearts of men. The allure was not merely in appearance, but in status, in conquest, in the silent pride of possessing what others could not. And then there was Shui Yanyu. Her beauty alone could already stir storms within the hearts of men, but it was her bearing, her grace, her effortless elegance, that made her truly irresistible. Each step she took seemed to ripple through the air like a gentle breeze over still water. Every glance, every movement, held a subtle charm that could ensnare even the most disciplined cultivator. Coupled with her immortal-level cultivation, she became the center of gravity in the entire hall. No one could ignore her. As Ling Han and Shui Yanyu sat within the inn, the atmosphere subtly shifted, eyes followed her, conversations quieted, only to erupt again in hushed, shameless murmurs. What a stunning woman! Look at that figure, those curves, I'd give anything just to touch. Hair and those breasts, one hand wouldn't even be enough. The crude laughter that followed was like poison drifting through the air. Ling Han's expression hardened instantly. His gaze swept across the room like a blade, and soon locked onto one man. The culprit was a burly middle-aged cultivator, his body thick with muscle and his face fierce as a wild beast. Yet absurdly, he wore a bright red robe that clashed violently with his rough appearance, making him seem both dangerous and ridiculous. Sensing Ling Han's stare, the man turned, his lips curling into a sneer. "Brat, what are you staring at?" His voice rang out sharply as he pointed a thick finger toward Ling Han. "Keep looking, and I'll beat you to death." Before Ling Han could respond, Shui Yanyu's hand tightened gently around his arm. "Ling Han," she said softly, a hint of concern in her voice. She did not wish for conflict here, but Ling Han only shook his head. Without hesitation, he gently removed her hand and rose to his feet. His steps were calm, but carried a weight that seemed to press down on the very air. He walked straight toward the man. The middle-aged cultivator let out a mocking laugh, his eyes filled with disdain. "What, feeling protective over your little beauty?" he sneered. "You look like some pampered young master from a big clan. That's the only reason you could ever have a woman like her." His tone grew sharper, tinged with jealousy. "Without your background, what are you worth?" Ling Han stopped in front of him, his gaze cold as winter frost. "You've lived this long," he said slowly, "yet all your years might as well have been fed to dogs." The room seemed to still. "If you cannot even control your tongue, then what use is that mouth of yours?" A ripple of tension spread through the hall. The middle-aged man's expression darkened instantly. "What a sharp tongue," he said coldly. "Very well, today I'll teach you something." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Without your clan, you're nothing." Around them, the other cultivators merely watched with amusement. Some leaned back, arms crossed, eager for entertainment. No one intervened, not even the innkeeper. Here, such conflicts were as common as breathing. As long as no outsider caused trouble, the inn would not interfere. If the two chose to fight, even to the death, that was their own affair. Only if one of them begged for help would anyone step in. But Ling Han had no intention of asking for help. By now, he had already closed the distance. A faint surge of aura rippled outward from him, subtle, yet oppressive. His divine sense, tempered countless times through the indestructible heavens scroll, pressed down like an invisible blade. The middle-aged man's eyes narrowed. "You're courting death!" Without warning, he struck. His palm came crashing down toward Ling Han's head, swift, brutal, and filled with killing intent. Though his words spoke of teaching a lesson, his strike was meant to end a life. Ling Han let out a cold snort. He raised his own hand and met the attack head-on. "Pah!" Their palms collided. A thunderous shockwave exploded outward, visible to the naked eye. Tables nearby were overturned instantly, wood splintering under the force. "Ah!" The middle-aged man cried out in pain. The moment their palms met, it felt as though he had struck a slab of divine metal. The recoil surged through his arm, threatening to shatter his bones. Shock filled his eyes. How could this be? This young man was only in the medium extreme, yet his strength... The man staggered back a step, his right hand trembling, but his pride would not allow retreat. With a growl, he clenched his fist and struck again. Ling Han answered in kind. Peng! Fists collided. This time the impact was even more violent. The middle-aged man's body swayed violently as he was forced backward. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. Until he had retreated 7 full steps, he crashed into a table behind him. Boom! The table shattered into splinters under the force. Still, his momentum had not fully dissipated, until a nearby cultivator casually extended a hand and pushed against him, halting his retreat. The man hissed sharply through clenched teeth. He raised his fist, and his expression changed. Part of it had caved in. His bones were broken. Only then did the truth fully strike him. What kind of monstrous physique was this? He had intended to dominate through close combat, taking advantage of his higher cultivation. Instead, he had been completely suppressed. Regret burned within him. This brat had clearly specialized in body refinement. That was the only explanation for such terrifying defense. And instantly his assumptions solidified. This young man had to be the heir of some powerful clan, someone who had access to endless resources, divine medicines, and years of cultivation to forge such a body. After all, raising one's physique to the immortal level required unimaginable wealth. Daily immersion in rare divine herbs, countless years of refinement. It was not something an ordinary cultivator could afford. Jealousy surged like fire within his heart. Here he stood, a high-extreme cultivator, yet lacking everything this youth possessed, power, physique, and even the woman by his side. Die! With a furious roar, he changed tactics. Weng. A strange vibration spread from his mouth. Sound waves condensed into form, shaping themselves into a human figure wielding a staff. The phantom warrior raised its weapon and brought it crashing down toward Ling Han. This time, he had learned, he would not fight at close range again. Ling Han's eyes flickered with mild surprise. A sound-based martial technique? Rare indeed. Yet no matter how strange the technique, its strength still depended on the cultivator behind it. And this opponent was not enough. Without hesitation, Ling Han dashed forward. The sound-formed figure struck. Ling Han simply raised his hand and caught the descending staff. Peng! His body paused slightly under the force, but the attack was completely neutralized. He glanced down. His sleeve had torn apart, and a faint mark appeared on his skin. After all, the opponent was still a high-extreme cultivator. He could not be entirely underestimated. Ling Han let out a soft sigh. Yet this simple reaction caused shockwaves far greater than the battle itself. The surrounding cultivators stared in disbelief. Did you see that? He's only at the medium extreme. Yet he can clash directly with Hu Chiwei, and even injure him. That's at least 1-star genius level. And his physique, it's monstrous. He must come from a major clan, raised on divine medicine since childhood. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Every gaze toward Ling Han now carried a different weight. No longer mockery, but envy. Because in their eyes, everything about him, his strength, his body, his companion, was the privilege of someone born into power. And they were nothing but wandering cultivators struggling to survive in a ruthless world. The wind within the inn seemed to freeze as killing intent surged like a rising tide. Die, die, die! Hu Chiwei's voice thundered through the hall, each roar carrying the weight of decades upon decades of battle experience. His figure moved ceaselessly, like a phantom dancing between shadows, and with every breath he expelled, waves of sound burst forth into the air. Those sound waves did not remain formless. They twisted, condensed, and took shape, one after another, transforming into human silhouettes that stepped forward from the void, each gripping a staff as though born for slaughter. In an instant, the air was filled with attackers. Peng! 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 Staff shadows rained down like a relentless storm, striking toward Ling Han from every direction. Though each blow failed to break through his defenses, the force behind them was not to be underestimated. After all, Hu Chiwei stood at the high extreme, an elite who had walked the path of slaughter for untold years. Even Ling Han found his advance halted. Each step forward was blocked. Each movement was pressured. He could not close the distance. Hu Chiwei threw his head back and laughed, his voice booming with arrogance and certainty. Young man, you may have been blessed with a superior background, allowing your foundation to surpass others, but when it comes to true combat, it is experience that reigns supreme. His eyes gleamed with pride, like a veteran who had carved his name into history with blood. I have fought my way through life for 210,000 years. How could you possibly compare to me? Ling Han paused. For a brief moment, his gaze deepened. To one who had risen from a small world, where even those who reached the shattering void tier could only hope to live for around 1,000 years. Such a number was beyond comprehension. Even now, though he had already stepped into the medium extreme, he had never truly placed himself on the same level as these ancient beings. 200,000 years. That was the span of a single life here, and yet, by comparison, he was frighteningly young. A faint smile curved upon his lips. "Is that so?" he replied calmly. Hu Chiwei's expression twisted with fury. "Just wait until I smash that handsome face of yours into pieces. Let's see if you can still smile then." He drew in a deep breath, his chest swelling, then unleashed a thunderous roar. Weng! This time the sound did not merely ripple, it condensed into something far more terrifying. A massive humanoid figure formed in the air, at least 3 times larger than before. Its body shimmered with vibrating energy, and in its hand it held not a staff, but a sword forged from pure sound. The figure surged forward without hesitation, raising its blade and thrusting directly toward Ling Han's face with deadly precision. Ling Han snorted coldly, his right hand lifted. A simple motion, a light press. Weng, invisible divine patterns of gravity spread out instantly, like an unseen domain descending upon the battlefield. The sound-formed figure faltered. Its body dropped abruptly, as though the heavens themselves had pressed down upon it. Its movements twisted, distorted, and lost all coordination. Peng! The sword that had been aimed at Ling Han's face veered downward uncontrollably, slamming into the wooden floor. A massive gash tore open the ground. Dust exploded into the air, spreading through the hall like a choking fog. Many cultivators hurriedly waved their sleeves, trying to block the intrusion of dust. Yet there were some who did not move at all, seated calmly, unmoving as mountains. When the dust drifted toward them, it halted mid-air, as though an invisible wall stood before them, preventing even a single grain from advancing further. At first glance they appeared ordinary, but a closer look revealed something far more terrifying. Within their bodies lurked an aura so deep, so vast, that once unleashed, it could crush any mountain river tier cultivator into nothingness. They were elites of the Sun Moon tier. Hu Chiwei's pupils shrank. What? His heart trembled. That attack just now was among his strongest techniques, and yet Ling Han had dispelled it with nothing more than a casual lift of his hand. Unacceptable, completely unacceptable. Before his thoughts could settle, Ling Han had already moved. He stepped forward and threw a punch. Humph! Though shaken, Hu Chiwei was no coward. He immediately retreated, his figure shifting backward as he opened his mouth once more, unleashing another wave of sonic attacks. But now, Ling Han was no longer holding back. With the divine patterns of gravity activated, those sound waves were crushed the moment they formed, compressed, twisted, and shattered before they could even reach him. This was no ordinary power. A mountain river stone with a special attribute was an object of immense value, something incredibly difficult to obtain. Its might was beyond the ordinary. Once again, Ling Han extended the influence of gravity. Hu Chiwei's movement technique slowed, just for a moment, but that moment was enough. The distance between them collapsed instantly. Ling Han's fist descended like a falling star. Hu Chiwei raised both arms to block, but under the crushing pressure of gravity, his movements were just a fraction too slow. That fraction determined everything. Ling Han's fist broke through his defense and slammed directly into his face. The impact rippled across his features like waves crashing upon a shore. Flesh twisted, muscles rolled, and then split apart. Hu Chiwei was sent flying. His body hurtled backward, about to crash into a pillar. But at that very instant, a figure moved, a hand reached out, caught him. Had that impact landed, the pillar might have shattered, and the entire building could have collapsed. When the crowd looked again, they fell silent. Half of Hu Chiwei's face was gone. Bone fragments were exposed, flesh was torn open, blood flowed freely. The sight was horrifying. "Enough," a calm voice spoke. "If this continues, someone will truly die." The one who had caught Hu Chiwei was an old man with a white beard. Moments ago he had seemed like just another unremarkable figure in the crowd. Yet now, he stood there as though he had always been at the center of everything. His aura expanded without restraint. Behind him, the projection of a complete sun and moon appeared, revolving slowly. He was at the peak stage of the low extreme of the sun-moon tier. "Elder Qian! Greetings, Elder Qian!" Voices rose one after another in respect. This man, Qian Yi, an elder of the great chariot gang. Though he appeared gentle and composed, those who knew him understood the truth. His hands were stained with countless lives. He was ruthless beyond measure. Ling Han did not press the attack further. His goal had already been achieved. This display was enough to silence anyone who dared to insult Shui Yanyu. He nodded slightly toward Qian Yi, then turned and walked calmly to the counter. "We would like accommodations." The innkeeper looked up. "One room or two?" "One," Ling Han answered without hesitation. "Two." Shui Yanyu quickly corrected, but before her words could settle, Ling Han's arm wrapped around her waist. Her body softened instantly. The protest she had been about to voice dissolved into a dazed gaze, her eyes shimmering with a charm that could melt hearts. "One," Ling Han repeated. The innkeeper gave a knowing smile. "The cost is 1 true origin stone per day. While you stay here, your safety is guaranteed. Of course, if you choose to engage in fights yourself, that is another matter." He continued calmly, as though reciting a long-practiced rule. "You must pay for 10 days in advance. No refunds will be given for unused time. After 10 days, if you wish to continue, another 10 stones will be required." Black-hearted, everyone knew it. Ships departed only once every 3 days. Most travellers stayed no more than 2 or 3 days. Yet here, you paid for 10, and got nothing back. Ling Han did not even blink. He took out 10 true origin stones and placed them on the counter. To him, this amount was insignificant. "Master, I'll lead the way." A worker stepped forward and guided them upstairs. The inn had 5 floors. They stopped on the 4th. The room itself was simple, far from luxurious. But that was not the point. Here, they were under the protection of the great chariot gang. Unless the Yang clan personally intervened, no one would dare cause trouble. "Would the 2 of you like to rest or come down for a meal?" the waiter asked politely. "Rest," Ling Han replied. "Understood. I will not disturb you further." The waiter stepped out and closed the door. Silence fell. Only the 2 of them remained. Shui Yanyu's eyes sharpened immediately as Ling Han approached. "Don't you dare mess around," she warned, her guard raised. Ling Han laughed lightly. "What nonsense are you thinking about?" His expression shifted slightly. His divine sense transmitted a message directly to her. "Did you forget? I possess a spatial god tool. I'll take you inside for a look." Shui Yanyu froze. A spatial god tool. A treasure spoken of only in legends. Even the Empress herself could not possess such a thing. Her heart trembled. "Do not resist my divine sense," Ling Han instructed. "Enwu!" She had just nodded. But in the next instant, Ling Han leaned forward and kissed her. Her voice dissolved into soft, muffled sounds. Her hands pushed against him at first, but gradually, her strength faded. She lost herself in the warmth of the moment. Her mind drifted, her defenses vanished, her spirit unprotected. In that instant, Ling Han moved. With ease, he drew her into the Black Tower. She did not notice at first, only after a long moment, when Ling Han finally withdrew, did she regain her senses, her face flushed with anger. "You shameless!" But before she could finish, her voice stopped, her eyes widened, the words died in her throat, because before her, a completely different world had unfolded. She stood there, utterly stunned.